Alright, today we're going to be working on finding the y-intercept on a line. So previously we talked about finding the slope if we have 2 points, a graph, or a table. Today we're going to be talking about taking that one step further and now finding the y-intercept. So, did you know that we can find an equation even if we don't have the b? Okay, if we don't have a graph to find the b, or if the graph's really uncertain on tell, we can still find it. So step 1 of what we're going to do is we're going to find the y-intercept by plugging in what we already know. For example, we know the slope. So we're going to do y equals mx plus b, because that's what we're going to start with. We're going to write the slope-intercept form equation. Then I'm going to substitute in my slope for m. So then I do y equals 3x plus b. But because it gave me a point on the line, I actually know more than just the slope. I know what my x and y value are on my line at one point, so I can plug those in. So I'm going to plug that in, and I'm going to plug in 5 for y equals 3 times 2 plus b. So now I have 3 times 2 is 6 plus b equals 5. Center my equation's the equal sign, and I'm going to solve from here. So I multiplied, and now I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides to solve. Okay, 5 minus 6 is negative 1, so my b is equal to negative 1. So now that I know that, I can simplify, and I can do step 2, which is write the equation. So now that I know the equation, I can plug in my slope and my b. So I have y equals 3x, and my b is negative 1, so minus 1. And there is my equation. So I wrote it in slope-intercept form, plugged the 3 for m, and the negative 1 in for b. Oops. So if you need a few more moments, please pause and go back, but I'm going to continue forward on to some more example problems for us. All right, so if our slope is negative 1, and our point is 3, 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Now I know my negative 1, so I'm going to plug that in, and I'm going to have y equals negative 1x plus b. Now I have to plug in points 3 and 2. Okay, remember that 3 is x and 2 is y. So it's going to be plugging that in as 2 equals negative 1 times 3 plus b. So now I'm going to multiply. I have 2 equals negative 1 times 3, which is negative 3 plus b. Now I'm going to solve for b, center my equation's equal sign. To get rid of negative 3, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. 2 plus 3 is 5, so b is equal to 5. That makes my equation y equals negative 1x plus 5, or negative 1 times x is just y equals negative x plus 5. Again, if you need me to slow down, go ahead and pause, rewind, do whatever you need to make sure you're getting all of these answers written down. I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right, for this next one, again, I know my slope and I know a point, so I'm going to write my equations. Y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug 1/4 in for m, so I now have y equals 1/4 x plus b. Now I'm going to plug in my 4 for x and my 2 for y. So I have 2 equals 1/4 times 4x plus b. To multiply 4 times 1/4 together, I have to put 4/1. I then can cross reduce, and that's 1 and 1. So now I have 2 equals 1 times 1 is 1 plus b. So now center of my equation is my equal sign. I'm going to get rid of the 1 by subtracting 1. 2 minus 1 is 1 equals b. So now I know my slope and my y-intercept, so I can write it on in. I'm going to write in y equals 1/4 x plus 1. All right, let's move on to our next problem. This time we're going to make it a little bit harder by making it where our slope isn't given. Instead, we just have 2 points. How am I going to solve it? Well, first I have to find my slope, then plug it in, and go from there. So let's start with finding slope. Remember the formula for slope is m equals change in y over change in x. In other words, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now let's label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2, and let's plug them in to find my slope. So y2 comes first, that's negative 15, minus y1, which is negative 41. Then comes my x2, which is 4 minus 0. Okay, whenever I am subtracting a negative, that's the same thing as adding. So now I have 41 plus 15. So imagine this way. It's now I owe $15 and I have 41 in my pocket. It's the same thing as 41 minus 15. Okay, I can't subtract that, so I'm going to put that as a 3. 11 minus 5 is 6. 3 minus 1 is 2. So now I have 26 over 4 minus 0, which is 4. I can now reduce this by taking 2 out of each of this, so that's 13 over 2 is my slope. So now that I have 13 over 2, I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my equation. Y equals 13 over 2 x plus b. Okay, because remember I got that from the equation y equals mx plus b. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in some of my points. Okay, so I'm going to plug in first. I'm going to do this one here because I don't want to have to multiply 13 over 2 by anything, and I know anything times 0 is 0, so I'm going to plug in this point. So I'm going to plug in y equals negative 41 equals 13 over 2 times 0 plus b. Okay, 13 over 2 times 0 is equal to 0 plus b. So negative 41 is equal to 0 plus b. So negative 41 is equal to b. So now if I plug that into my equation, I get y equals 13 over 2x minus 41. All right, now that we've solved this kind of a long way, I'm going to show you a trick for how we could have found b a lot easier. Remember that the y-intercept is whenever the x is 0 or we cross the y-axis. This y-axis mark is always x equals 0. So if I ever have a point where x equals 0, that tells me right away that that's my y-intercept. So I could have just looked at this and said, my y-intercept, my b, is going to equal negative 41 because x is 0 there. I could have said that right away. I didn't have to do anything else math-wise. But if I needed to do the math-wise, now you've seen how to do it. All right, let's try another one of these harder ones. All right, again, we have to find our slope first. So our slope formula is m equals change in y over change in x, or rise over run. And the other way we write that is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now we're going to plug in. Okay, remember this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. So I'm going to do 15 minus 5 over 3 minus 1. Okay, 15 minus 5 is 10, 3 minus 1 is 2. 10 over 2 can be simplified to 5. So now I'm going to plug it into the equation y equals mx plus b. So it's y equals 5x plus b. Now I have to pick one of my points to plug in. I'm going to plug this one in here. So that's going to be 5 for y equals 5 times 1 for x plus b. 5 times 1 is going to be 5 plus b, and my y is still 5. Center of my equation is my equal sign. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. That's going to cancel out. 5 minus 5 is 0, so b is equal to 0. So if I were to write this as an equation, I would write it as y equals 5x plus 0, and then if I were to simplify it, it's y equals 5x. All right. Let's go on to our next one. I'm going to make it a little bit harder now, and I'm going to give you a table. So now if I'm looking at the table, once again, I'm going to label my points x1, x2, y1, y2. And I'm going to start by finding my slope using my formula m equals change in y over change in x, which equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now I'm going to plug my points in. So that's going to be 7 minus 5 all over 1 minus 0. Okay, 7 minus 5 is 2. 1 minus 0 is 1. Simplify that, my slope is 2. So if I'm going to plug it into my formula, y equals mx plus b, I need to plug in y equals 2x plus b. Now you'll remember a few minutes ago, I told you if you ever see x equals 0, then whatever your y value is, that's automatically your b. Well, in this case, I have x equals 0. So my b is going to be 5. And I can just plug that in. Okay, so my equation would be y equals 2x plus 5. But if you wanted to double check that, I could also plug these points in. And I could say 5 equals 2 times 0 plus b. 2 times 0 is 0 plus b equals 5. 0 plus b is just b, so b equals 5. So remember, whenever you see that x is 0, you got a freebie, and it's easy to just plug that in for b. All right, let's do one more practice problem together. So now we're going to do 10. Now we're going to do from the table again. So again, our slope formula is m equals change in y over change in x, which equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I gotta label my points x1, y1, x2, y2, and now I gotta plug them in. So now I have 4 minus 10 over 1 minus negative 1. Remember, whenever I'm subtracting a negative, that makes an addition. So I have 4 minus 10. So if I have $4 but I owe you 10, I still owe you $6. 1 plus 1 is 2. If I simplify that, that's negative 3. So now I'm going to plug negative 3 in for my slope. Remember, my formula is y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug in that negative 3. All right, now I'm going to plug in a point. So I'm going to plug in 4 and 1 or 10 and negative 1, whichever you want to do. I'm going to do 10 and negative 1. So 10 is y equals negative 3 times negative 1 plus b. Negative 3 times negative 1 is going to be a positive 3 plus b equals 10. So now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides. That's going to give me 7 equals b. So my formula is y equals negative 3x plus 7. All right, now that we've got this all done, you guys can go ahead and work on your next checkpoint, which is going to be checkpoint 7, similarities and differences in lines. Have a great day.